Welcome back, and this is still Sunrise. Let's really get the show on the road. The federal government and organized labor finally reached a consensus after days of deliberation on the percentage increase on the consequential adjustment in the new minimum wage, which was assented to by the president in April. Well, you know that since April, there's been plenty of upping and downing between federal government and organized labor. And in fact, labor did promise to call out a nationwide strike if things didn't change. Well, the meetings apparently have yielded some result, and it seems that the strike has been called off. But let's get ourselves up to speed as to how the negotiations went and exactly where we stand on this matter. Now, it's my pleasure to welcome Joe Ajaero of the United Labour Congress. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We are also expecting the General Secretary of the Nigerian Union of Railway Workers, Segun Esan, to join us in the course of this conversation. Now, Mr. Ajaero, every time there's labor wahala, you're in the middle of it somewhere. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And well done for fighting for the people.
Thank you.
So, where do we stand right now? The strike has been called off, which leads us to assume that the negotiations went well, in inverted commas.
Well, how I wish Segun Esan is here already, because there seem to be two divides, My own part of the divide, said we are not going to be part of this so-called strike being called by NLC and TUC, because in the first instance, this strike was not meant to achieve anything, because the NLC and TUC had already asked for 29% increase, from the minimum wage. And if you go by the minimum wage, you discover that it amounted to about 66.7% increase. And then when they were talking of the adjustment, they now asked for 29%. Ordinarily, you will see that they were very considerate, by bringing it down to 29%. And some of us felt that that will not impact so much on the wages of workers, especially given the fact that even 30,000 naira is still a poverty wage. So that was where we had our differences. And then in calling for a strike, we discovered that they didn't want to go with the engine of the labor movements. So those sectorial unions, that could make a strike effective, we are not with them. For instance, you had NLC, TUC. The ULC unions, we are not there. So we looked at it that it was mere shakara on 29%. So ordinarily, we are saying, let government give them even that 29%. Even if that 29%, is given to them, what's the impact? But at the end of the day, something has been signed, and everybody is happy with it.
Okay. So what has been signed now?
Well, what has been signed is that there is a table already for federal workers. Now, the implication to states is something we are going to witness in the next few months. Because by the time you agree for 30,000 naira minimum wage for level 1, step 1, which doesn't exist anymore in the public service, because people are not recruited on level 1, step 1. Not even people with primary 6, can be recruited on level 1, step 1. But government made us to understand.
Just hang on. So on what level is a cleaner, for instance, employed?
Yeah, most of them could be employed on level 3, step something. So it's like you are having a step that is not already in existence.
So the lowest step at which anybody could be employed now is step 3?
Around level 3.
Level 3, sorry.
Yes,
level
yes,
3.
up there. Because there is no, in the public service, that grade level has been erased. Okay. So and that's the level we are talking of, maybe 30,000 naira. So moving on from there.
Oh, in other words, nobody is actually going to earn 30,000.
No, nobody is being recruited there. Nobody is there now. You can't even get. Who is this? It's a primary 6 education cleaner. Nobody can recruit you at level 1, step 1. So it's a level that doesn't exist. So in trying now to fashion what it is, you know, have to walk gradually to get the actual level where people exist. So that's the point we are making. So by the time you now start adding it, you see people getting maybe 5,000, you know, that's the next, maybe at level 6, they will get maybe 17,000. 17,000 instead of from 12,000 that was added from 18,000 to 30,000. So somebody on level 6, 7 will now get maybe 17,000. That's where it starts, you know, because there's additional 5,000 from level 1, step 1 to where he is. So they graduated it. Some people will now maybe around 10 or so will get about 10,000 in that order. So that is exactly what happened. It was not done across board, you know, to the extent that if you are getting 100,000 before, then 66.6%, or sorry, 0.7% of that will be added to you. That wasn't the way it was calculated.
Okay, but you see, in all of this now, people, Nigerians will be wondering, okay, is this the way to go? Yeah, you talked about we'll see the impact of this in the States. How would it work out because there are still people who used to earn 18,000 now, but they are not at level 1, or as you said. So what is the implication of this now?
The implication is that it's in the dynamics of salary negotiation and applicability. As at today, it's still like Zamfara. Workers there, we are still getting a minimum wage of about 7,500. Lagos State, as at today, was not paying 18,000. Now, having finished with
were they paying less?
Argue with you.
They were paying less. You see, they were paying less. So now, if you move, now that the federal table has been adjusted, ordinarily, there were states that should adopt the table holistically. You know, before now, it used to be Rivers, Lagos, you know, 1 or 2 other states. But it's no longer that way. The states are expected now to go and adjust. Depending on the culpability of the states, and I said this severally, the state unions, they will now go there and adopt a different table entirely. Because the state governors will always come up with the policy of inability to pay. So, and if it were in those states, if it happened to be in those states where the governors had pocketed the labor leaders, then you will expect something not up to even 30,000 in the table. So that is exactly what we have been seeing. Some states will do better. Like in the last dispensation, Edo State was paying 25,000 naira minimum wage from 18,000. And meanwhile, 30,000 is the benchmark.
Low.
Fine, the lowest. You know, so but in most instances, you see our people, you know, negotiating with the state governors who will come up with a cooked up revenue data that they are not making it. And when they come up with such data, you see such labor leaders behaving as if they were sympathetic. Because in the 36 states of the Federation, you have all the chairmen of the labor in those states as workers of the state government.
Okay, just hold on there. We've been joined by Achike Chude, who's the convener of the Joint Action Front. Thank you for joining us. Deputy convener. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you heard the news about the signing of that agreement. Mr. Ajaero says his own union, that the United Labour Congress wasn't part of that, wasn't going to be part of the strike. But okay, they've signed the agreement and the consequential adjustments will begin to happen. But I'm asking about the consequence of this signing now, of this increment. What do you think it will be?
Well, I mean, if our past history, recent past, history serves us any better, it will be to take even the signing with a pinch of salt, because we've had an agreement. We've had the agreements that were made as a result of protracted struggle all over the country. People were on the streets to put pressure on the government, and then they, had this agreement signed. Even when there was this agreement, I think at that initial stage, I'm sure the ULC was also part of it. After the whole thing, the governors started this dance, all over and all that. And again, beyond even this particular negotiation, cases we've had in the past with virtually every union, organized union in this country, has always ended up with government unilaterally, going their own way. Whether you're talking about ASU, you're talking about NASU, you're talking about, the polytechnic, unions and all of that. You talk about the NMA, and so it all ends up in the same situation. So the consequence is that I think would be that, again, you're going to have this challenge of, the government trying to match its words with action.
Okay, just hold your thoughts.
Yes,
We'll take a moment and come back to continue the conversation. Please join us again. Still on to Sunrise. Festus Akimbe was sentenced, says 30 naira minimum wage has long been signed into law. What workers were awarded yesterday is Udoji Award. The negotiation of the consequential adjustments is the easy part. The challenge is the implementation and the consequences. That's where you were at. The part about implementation.
Yeah, implementation. Again, look, I do not think that Nigerians are very unreasonable people, and they have shown a lot of, reason. Over almost 60 years after independence, look at where we are today, and you would expect that a country like Nigeria, that, finding ourselves where we are today, that we would have had an anarchical situation. But Nigerians have taken a lot of things in their stride. This issue of a minimum wage is something that, like I said, has gone on for too long. And of course, the issue again is the politicians or the political elites will come and ask us how they are going to implement this. And you look at it when you look at the lifestyle, even beyond the lifestyle. The amount itself is abominable. It's a scandal. Everybody knows, everybody that is reasonable knows that that money cannot do anything for any average family in this country, even for one person. And having arrived at that, you would expect that the government will do everything, in their power to get this thing implemented immediately. They will tell you there's no money, but we're aware of the quantum of monies that were spent during the election. Hundreds of billions of naira across the states, by various candidates. So these monies were being stacked somewhere for the purpose of the election itself, And then again, it's funny when you have senators and members of the House of Representatives earning 40 million naira a month, earning money legitimately through oversight allowances and all of these other revenue sources, and they are sitting down to discuss 30,000 naira minimum wage. It's a scandal. It's a scandal because it gives you an idea that these people are very far removed from the average Nigerian. I remember, let me just finish, when the NUT also, then at a time, we are also struggling to get their wages increased. And what was the quantum of increase for the teachers then? Some of them were to earn 500 naira. 1,000 naira, 2,000 naira. And the senators and members of House of Rep sat down and said it is not possible to pay this. And that's why I use the word, carefully. It's a scandal, what is going on in this country. Of course, there will be the workers, as the way I see it, even the labor leadership itself is not in a position to tell any other stories to the workers. They have waited for so long. And it is going to get to a level where even the labor leadership will find it very difficult to continue to lead the workers if even the basic things such as a minimum wage, that was provided for by law of this country, by the law of this country, is not implemented. Okay. So it's a very serious situation for even the labor leadership.
Mr. Ajaero, labor leadership comes into question here. The fact that these demands, there are those who feel that what the things labor should be fighting for is not necessarily minimum wage as much as cutting down the cost of governance, building and providing infrastructure. Because of that 30,000 naira, there's electricity tariffs likely to go up, fuel, transport costs, and all of that is likely to go up. VAT is going up. So at the end of the day, the 30,000 naira gets down, amounts to next to nothing. So is labor agitating for the right cause? Is labor looking at the right things?
Well, labor this time, you have those are in government employment, and those are the people that have signed this agreement, and the consequential adjustment, 29%, Then those in the private sector will go into negotiation on the implication of all this, and then sector by sector. Those in electricity will go, those in petroleum will go. Nobody's going to give us this table. And when you go there, you see the salary differential between the private sector and some of these sectors and the public sector. And then there we're going to factor in. The NLC and TUC had ample opportunity to adjust with the announcement of tariff in electricity, with the announcement of VAT increase between the time 30,000 was signed and the time of this consequential adjustment. But they didn't make use of it. And we didn't really get the information whether there is going to be arrears from the date it was signed till now and when it is taking effect. So I think this is just the beginning, because like he said, even in the states, what is going to happen? Factoring in all this tariff increase, VAT, by this VAT increase, the real 30,000 naira has lost almost 15%. By this 7.5 VAT, the real wage has lost almost. Now, notwithstanding that, from 18,000 to 30,000, inflation, value of the currency put into consideration, it's like we are receiving 14,000 naira now instead of 30,000. The market.
But
Mr. Ajaero, government may argue that VATable goods are not goods that the man earning 30,000 naira is likely to purchase.
Which are the VATable goods?
Luxury goods.
What
they
are
tell
they?
us, even though sometimes we
What are
wonder
they?
what a luxury good is.
But,
it's good.
if you do a transfer, a bank transfer,
Fine.
there's a VAT, you pay VAT.
Yes.
So even that guy too will
No,
also
clearly.
pay VAT. But Mr. Ajaero, you're not, again, you've shifted this thing to TUC and NLC, but you're also a Labour leader.
Yeah, what I'm saying that.
United Labour
What I'm
Congress.
saying that.
But the thing is Labour. I'm using.
See, let me tell you. I'm trying to explain to you that labor. You talk of labor, organized labor. There are about 50 industrial unions in the country.
In this country, there are 3 umbrellas that
Fine.
we know.
Now,
So
the unions
is Labour.
I will talk about
for the right.
Yeah.
For this is okay. For instance, is the United Labour Congress, for instance, now beginning to agitate that look, these things you've given 30,000 naira minimum wage, but you're increasing VAT, you're increasing electricity tariff, transport cost has gone up. Are you looking at that as well?
You see, the analysis goes this way. The unions under the United Labour Congress are not majorly covered by this agreement. We are going to do our own negotiations separately.
But they are getting 30,000 minimum wage. Are they part of that?
Well, they are getting more than that.
No, wait. Are they part of the 30,000 minimum wage?
No, I'm telling you that as at today, they are asking for 30,000. Nobody is getting less than 50,000 in our sectors. It's good we understand this.
Okay.
The list which was signed even before this 30,000 was from the iron and Sewun, steel and iron, whatever. And they got about 57. That's the list in the sector. But after this minimum wage, we do letters to our employers and factor in all this. And all of us are labor. Whether you are a teacher, you are a private sector, depending on what we call power relations of unions in those areas and workers. You see those differences. It doesn't mean that everybody, every sector, nobody in the sectors that are covered collect 30,000 even before 30,000 was signed as minimum wage. So we are going to come up with our own template to make sure these things are achieved. Now, what we couldn't do is to stop government from increasing VAT. But the implication of VAT on us, we are going to demand for it. The implication of tariff on us, we are going to demand for it. And I'm sure that the NLC and TUC, like we were saying, had taken consideration of this before looking at this table they came up with. But in the private sector and the unions under us, we have not gone into the so-called consequential adjustment, but we are going to take into consideration inflation and devaluation.
Mr.
Yeah, somebody had said, I think somebody in Brazil, I think a cleric, that when he said that the people have no bread, they called him a saint. When he asked the question, why do the people not have bread, they called him a communist. The reality you have, touched on an issue that a lot of people have been talking about. They say beyond the minimum wage. Why not ask government for social infrastructural services? Why not ask government to fix the roads? Why not ask this and that? These are political questions. And so by the time you begin to get to that level, you're getting into the level of politics because you're asking yourself, why is the government not working? Why is the government not delivering on social services? That is the basic responsibility of government. And, it is very clear. So, and I think that has been, in a way, to some extent, we are partners with Labour, the Joint Action Front. Very good. We have struggled with Labour over the years. With regards to the minimum wage and all the other struggles that they have embarked upon, we have been part and parcel of them. But our point of departure has been the fact that we think that, Labour has to get to that level where Labour realizes that we can't keep on doing the same thing and believe that a different result is going to, occur. We have to begin to ask the political questions. Why is our country not working? Why are our people hungry in the midst of so much, in the midst of so much resources, capital, human capital resources and natural resources and all of that. So these are political questions. And by the time you begin to ask these questions, you're going to put the political elites, on their seat. And another question is this: why is it that Labour, for instance, all this while has not agitated not just on behalf of Nigerians, but with Nigerians, with regards to the earnings, the illegitimate, as far as I'm concerned, they can justify it by the law, with the law, the issue of the allowances, humongous allowances, unconscionable allowances, of our political leaders, appointed and elected. Why are we not asking questions? Why our president still has to travel abroad for medical attention? Why our ministers have to go abroad for medical attention? Why the elites, political elites in this country, being subsidized with taxpayers' money, we have to continually send their children abroad and all of that, destroy social infrastructure in this country, so that with the monies that they have also taken from the state, they can also have the very best of both worlds, both here in Nigeria and abroad. We cannot continue to live this kind of life. Why is it that the governors are still earning security votes so many years, after people have been agitating, people have been talking about it and so on? These are critical issues and these are political issues. And the only way that this matter can be resolved is for the Nigerian people, Labour playing a very key role. Because, they have the infrastructure, that is needed, to mobilize Nigerians for the good of this country. Look, and the reality is that, look, somebody has said that there is not even as if the elites are not even aware of how dangerously they have driven this country towards the cliff. But they are so far gone in their ways that even if they wanted to stop, they will not be able to stop until they go over the edge. So we have to help them to save themselves. Otherwise, if ultimately anything goes wrong with this country, every single person will suffer, including they themselves, because we have no other country. And we look at the economic, situation. Look at everybody's talking about deficit budgeting. At what point, for instance, are they going to say, look, we cannot continue to borrow to finance, government business in this country? So ultimately, at the end of the day, we are the ones that are victims of the recklessness of government. We are the ones that have to pay the taxes. They are talking about taxes on beverages. We are waiting for them to, I can assure you, we are waiting for them to bring back the toll gates, in this country, and then they will see what we are going to do. Enough is enough. There must be an end to the endless sufferings. Nigerians, believe me, are suffering.
But Mr. Chude, I'm just playing devil's advocate here. Government says it does not have money. It needs to raise money to be able to run this country.
Have you listened to some of the analysis I gave about our political elites who are still carrying on as if this country is overblessed? The country is living in abundance. 112 million people are living in abject poverty. Now they are talking about multidimensional poverty of Nigerians. 94 million on less than $2 a day. And they are still traveling abroad. They are still riding the luxury cars. They are still earning 40 million naira a month. They are still doing all kinds. And they are telling us, the same people tell us, how can your father, if we are going to look at it from that perspective, says he does not have money to pay school fees for you. He does not have money to put balanced, diet on the table. He goes out and he buys 2 brand new cars and he's riding on those cars every day, and you're looking at him and he wants you to be convinced that he has done the right thing, for you. These are some of the contradictions that we see in the country today.
But Labour is supposed to be somewhat of a pressure group, right?
Yeah, clearly.
Now, so again, the question comes back to Labour. And Labour would always say they are fighting for the masses.
Yeah.
Whether they are private sector or public sector.
Yeah.
The organized Labour many times fights for the masses. Labour calls for strike and everybody, even the market women, shut down because Labour has called for a strike. So why is Labour not fighting for, or not agitating, let me use the word fighting, not agitating for these things that matter to the people?
Which things?
Infrastructure, build the roads, build the hospitals, ensure the schools are working effectively.
You see, the issue is that Labour...
Cut down cost of governance.
No, Labour can't cut down cost of governance.
No, they can't. Agitate for it.
Fine. You see, I think the problem is that we have not equally transformed Labour to be a political machinery. Some of these things you are raising.
So what happened to the Labour Party? I thought that was born from the Labour unions.
No. Labour
Or
Party
was it born from there and
is
then
a
hijacked?
political party that was bearing the name Labour.
So it had nothing to do with the labor union?
Well, the labor unions were part of it.
Okay.
The labor unions were part of it. But at the same time, if you watch, it was Ghana Family that fought to make sure that public servants are allowed to participate in politics. You see, they will still come out a law that will not allow a public servant, to participate in politics. And they have made the stake to be so high that you can't even pick nomination form. I tried an experiment in Imo State, to vie for Guba. And when the amount for nomination forms came up, I backed out.
Or you ran away.
You ran away.
No, I backed out. No, so I'm trying to explain to you, because you will not spend your time being a Protestant, and that was the reason Adams gave us then, that he has spent all his time taking tear gas, and that he wants to go in. Fine and good, he was lucky. And that was why when I was giving an example with Edo State, I mentioned that Edo State was paying 25,000, and Edo State wasn't among the best states that were getting high revenue. But because a labor man was there, and he tried to work on infrastructure. In terms of infrastructure, roads, electricity, or whatnot, they have collapsed. And I want you to understand that if they have collapsed, because of leadership, because of governance, and the labor leaders are not devoid, they are not separated from the decadence, either in governance or leadership. Labor leaders are Nigerians. And if you do a comparative analysis of unions in Nigeria, you can invite them here and look at the quality leadership we have. So as it is affecting the political leaders, it is affecting the labor leaders. And I'm talking of my colleagues.
Yeah. Okay.
Mr.
Ajaero, we're almost out of time. Let me read this tweet and then let's look at the way forward, the solutions. Ambassador Ola Tokumbo says, this minimum wage is pointless. Once the payment kickstarts, there will be automatic increments in all the daily expenses and will still be at the same circle of 18,000. In fact, someone did an analysis and says this 30,000 naira is actually worth about 12,000 naira, way less than that. So what is the way forward? What's going to happen?
Well, the way forward is that we are still at the same poverty level. And then there will be more crisis. I'm repeating, there will be more crisis in even the unions to implement it.
Yeah.
A table has been released by the federal government, but the federal workers are not up to 20% of the workers in the country. All the states will tell you, maybe apart from one or two, will tell you will not be able to pay. Yeah. In the private sector, most of them, by the time we go there, will tell you we can't pay. There's no electricity, there's no road, there's no this. And then we'll go into a serious fight. The market women, the landlords, all of them will tell you we have increased. Cost of cement and building materials will go up. So it's like, igniting a fire, that will continue to burn.
Yeah.
And I pray that we'll have enough courage, to engage in this fight and come out of it stronger. I think if we had allowed inflationary rate, at where it was at 18,000, value of dollar, cost of rice at 5,000 now to 6,000 and all that, it would have been better for us. What a Nigerian worker was getting at 18,000, was better in terms of the market value than now. At 30,000, you can't get what you were getting with 18,000. So you may have a basket full of naira, chasing for a handful of products. And that's going to be bad. And that shows the economy is down there.
All right, Mr. Chike.
Yes, my own solution is even beyond even the issue of minimum wage. We have to rejig the politics of this country. We have to have a political leadership and get the elite to buy into the Nigerian project. We have to define what the Nigerian project is, first of all. We have to tell ourselves the truth that we cannot continue along this path because it can only lead us to the abyss. So we need to focus on the politics. We need to focus on the people that govern this country so that there will be a consensus that, look, we need to look for a way out. We need to, look at how to, reset the economy. Okay. The issue of natural resources and human capital resources, how do we best utilize these things?
So, over to you now, Labour. We are waiting for you to lead us. We, the people of Nigeria, are waiting for you to lead us. That's where we have to leave it this morning. And I have to thank
concede that authority to us.
Mr. Joe Ajaero of the
referendum.
United Labour Congress and Mr. Chude, Deputy Convener, Joint Action Front. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us this morning. Sunrise will return with another interesting conversation. Do join us.